I want to welcome everybody to the second presentation for this camp. Let's open with a word of prayer. Holy God, we thank you that you are here with us and that we can receive the blessing that you desire to give to us. We hope that the theme of this camp will be unity as we try to understand in a clearer fashion the work that you are doing in the world and in this movement to bring the great controversy to a close. We ask for a special outpouring of the Holy Spirit in our studies, in the music that we listen to, the songs that we sing, our conversations. May they all be for the express purpose of glorifying your name at this camp and bringing this work to a conclusion. Pray in Jesus' name. Amen. I noticed in the introduction a point that I wanted to bring up wasn't mentioned. Maybe it was inappropriate to do it then. So I want to do it now. We've had international camp meetings on numerous occasions over the years. And one of the issues that confronts us that should trouble you are members having private meetings during the time of this camp. If you feel you have something to say, we ask that you don't say it here. We ask that you don't gather people to private meetings in your homes. It's not only a distraction, it's disrespectful. We've been aware of that happening in the recent past. And we've neither done anything about it or mentioned it. But I'm mentioning it today at the beginning of this camp. So I want to invite you to a private meeting. If someone invites you to a private meeting, first tell them no, and then do your duty and report them to the leadership team here. After that, so them note, we can relax a bit. You've probably not had an opportunity to check, and don't check now. But I've sent the teaching schedule for this week. I apologize for the delay. It's not the official camp schedule that will be done after this meeting. I've also taken the unusual step of sharing with you the outline of what every single teacher is going to be speaking about this week, which is something that we've never done before, I believe. So as soon as you get an opportunity to look at the PDF that I sent, you'll see who the speakers are. Shouldn't come as a surprise that they're the 5 speakers who have been discussing the Sunday law subject. But what may come as a surprise to you is that it's already predetermined what they will speak about. As always, everybody is free to speak to anyone they want to in the normal settings that we all know are acceptable. So please take the opportunity to speak to those 5 individuals, and hopefully they'll be able to address your questions. And you can do that, as I say, privately, off camera. But we have a very structured program this week. So, as I say, you've seen the material that will be covered for the first 7 presentations. Excluding the one that was on Sabbath. If you exclude my 2, I think there are 5 presentations, and the material is already laid out for you. The weekend we have 3 Q&As. They won't be your usual Q&As. If I haven't already posted on the forum the invitation to submit questions, I'm doing that now. Please submit your questions to me only. There'll only be specific questions that will be answered. So ask any question you want. And if those questions fit in with the agenda that we have, we'll try to tackle them. So you all know that these 5 speakers have their own individual messages. Some of them have changed their message over time. The 2 people that have changed over time, if you've kept track of what's happening, have been Aaron and Arian. They have shifted their position over time. Curtis, Elder Terry, and Eleanor haven't. Before Slovakia, I knew that these studies were going to come to their conclusion, and I began to plan what the next step would be. During Slovakia and the the opening up of the discussions that we had on Revelation 17, it seemed clear to me the direction in which we needed to go. We as a movement, we as leadership directing this movement. So what I planned to do was try to answer two questions. And I've been asking those questions over several camp meetings. I'll try to give you the date. It's at the beginning of September, where the 5 speakers and myself begin to have private studies. As of today, I'm going to call them closed study, not private. We began at the start of September. And as of today, we've done 11 studies. And it's approximately 30 hours. So we've been talking about this Sunday law issue for 30 hours in private. And during that time, there have been several camp meetings, as you're well aware of. So initially, the purpose of these conversations, these studies that we were having, was to answer two questions, as I've already said. So we all know, according to the spirit of prophecy, that the test at the end of the world would have two components to it. There would be a law, and it would be connected to Sunday. And it would happen in the USA. And from the USA, it would spread to the world. All of us know that. Several years ago, we began to change what that test was. And we moved that test to what was simply called equality. Both privately and publicly, I've expended a lot of energy trying to give my understanding of what this test was. I can't say that I'm correct, but I can say that I've disagreed with many people's understanding of what we will call, or I'll call now, the great test. Ellen White uses that term great in different ways, but in the context in which we're discussing it, it's the Sunday law test. So at a surface level, just using a simple definition of the word equality, we can agree that there has been a change in what that test is. And it would be correct to say that it's equality. But the fulfillment of what that test actually is and looks like, I think is different to what many of us expected. So this work, whether it was conscious or unconscious, and I'm referring to those who have taught on the subject, has been in flux, has been changing over several years now. If I could just go to two reference points without giving it a year. One of them was a discussion on my role and the roles of other leading teachers. Specifically Elder Jeff and Elder Tess. Now, I have viewed our roles as being very different, theirs and mine. Connected to that was the subject of priests, Levites, and Nethinims. All of us know you should all have at least some understanding of the construction and the build up of this prophetic theology, prophetic model. So it's been around well over 10 years. In the early days, it would be called the Ezra 7 study, I guess. Carry on. Yeah. It'd been around for several years. And then Elder Tess began teaching Acts 27. And what she did was revived and refined the study of priests, Levites, and Nethinims. Some of it was new, some of it was already understood. The movement was already aware that when you hit the beach of Malta, their interaction with those islanders was the Sunday law time period. So that wasn't new. What was new was the symbolic representation of the people on the boats and the boats themselves. So even up to several years ago, we had an expectation of this priest, Levites, and Nethinim model fulfilling in a specific way. It didn't help that we had created lines for each of these three groups. And then a term began to surface that Acts 27 was the fifth line. So I'm not disputing any of that, but the fulfillment of, if I can call it, these first three lines was not fulfilled in the way that people expected. Even today, and it's rather late, I'm not sure if we have provided good prophetic reasons of why the priests, Levites, and Nethinim lines were never going to be fulfilled in the way that had been suggested. Was that too much or is it okay? I have always suggested that there has been no failure on the part of the movement. However, we define the movement. This nebulous thing has not failed in its mission. The issue of priests, Levites, and Nethinims was never going to be fulfilled in the way that we originally thought, that we predicted even. Around 2023, 24, 2023, 2024, people began to discuss, began to understand whether or not we were entering into the Sunday law waymark. This was based on various prophetic ideas. One of them was Panium, which Elder Tess had already given us the year for. The other one was the Ukraine war, which she had given us some important information about. And the third thing that we were aware of, I'm going to call it the rise of the New Republic. Not the Republic as you might understand it, but the Republican Party. So we could see these elements. One of them was a prophetic symbol, and the other two were based upon what we saw in the world, the media. The issue of the Sunday law began to be discussed. And we've ended up in a place where we have moved away from the spirit of prophecy model, that it's a law about Sunday, and we are on the subject of equality, but it's now framed in a very different way. And what I want all of us to see clearly is the following point. All 5 speakers are saying one thing. Call it one message. And that is the Sunday law is connected to the US election cycle. I'm fairly sure that the term election cycle is a recognized official term. It's not something that I've made up. And for example, the 2016 election, the vote occurred in November, as you all know. But there are many events that come before and come after that election day. The beginning of that process up to its end is what's referred to as the election cycle. Sometimes the election cycle, it refers to the 4-year cycle. Can be used that way too. But I'm referring to it as all the events that come before November and are post November. Everyone who's speaking about a Sunday law message, at least in a public setting in our movement, are all teaching the same thing, that the Sunday law is connected to an election now. No longer a law, regardless of what that law is about. So none of them are teaching that it's, as far as I'm aware, I'll put a hook on that one. I'll say it this way. Most of them are saying that the Sunday law is not connected to any law that the US government makes. So I found that interesting because I wanted to understand how and why that change has happened. So I asked a question to all of them. Please give me your proof, your understanding of how you get from a law. We'll leave the issue of it being Sunday. But how do you get from a law to an election? Because that is a seismic change. And you need to have some good reasons to do that. Because if you were to ask an Adventist, whether you go back to um, the pioneers or the early Advent church up to today, the Adventist church has good, sound, robust arguments to prove that it is a law. In fact, this movement taught those very things only a few years ago. So the question that should be central in your minds is, how have we made that change? Many of us, if we were to answer that question, would go to world events or logic, or some of us would just say, Elder Test told us so. So I hope we're all mature enough to reject every single one of those arguments. Do you want me to start? Yeah. Ready, Shemaine? Shemaine? So it was clear to me that all five speakers had the same message. At least, no, four of them definitely have moved from a law to an election. One of the speakers may express it slightly differently. And not only is it connected to a US election cycle, it's the 2024 election cycle specifically. So that's the two questions that I've been asking publicly and in these private conversations that we've had. To, to explain how you change from a law to an election, and why this election. How do you know it's the 24 election, not the one in the past or one in the future? So it may surprise you that 30 hours of studying together only scratch the surface of trying to define reasonable proofs for those two questions. So, as these teachers began to explain their position on your behalf, I set some ground rules, which I hope all of you believe and think are reasonable. Maybe you don't. If you don't, then you have a much lower bar than I do, and it should be easier for you. Easier to get the wrong answer. So, ground rules. No one is allowed to quote Elder Jeff or Elder Tess in their arguments. You're not allowed to introduce any media sources into your proofs. They're the two big ones. As the speakers go through their presentations, they, I suspect, will explain further constraints that were placed upon them. I'm just going to put angels, despite my better judgment, and no media. So if you're not sure about that, then I refer you to the recent camp meeting in South Africa. Can't remember how many presentations it was, but it's a lot of presentations that went back to Isaiah 46. So if you're not familiar with that, I just refer you back to those studies. There were lots of them. And these two constraints, no angels, I'll put modern, no modern angels, and no media, if you want to think about those constraints using methodology, then it would be this system of study that's brought to view in Isaiah 46. The past, present, and future. If you were to use that methodology, you don't need modern angels and you need no media. If you haven't watched Justina's presentations that she did in South Africa, you should watch them. She's here with us. You can. I would take the opportunity to speak with her. But what she demonstrated, I think, really powerfully is not how clever our teachers are, but despite our human frailty, God has been leading this movement step by step. And studies and the topics of those studies have come on stream at the right moment. So, given these constraints, it becomes quite difficult to prove things. All five of the speakers attempted their best efforts. we ended up as a conclusion that we had 5 proofs. You might think they're not very good proofs. You might have your own proofs. We could increase the number. But initially, there was a consensus. That means all 5 agreed that these 5 proofs were sound, were correct, and they proved that what we call the Sunday law waymark was the 2024 US election. The cycle. So you don't get confused about the date, November. So initially, there was agreement on that. As time went on, that agreement or that consensus didn't hold. So we currently are in the following position. We have 5 speakers. One of them agrees with all 5. Number 2 and number 3 do. Number 4 only agrees with 4 of the proofs. And not the 5th one. And the 5th speaker and I will let them explain. They don't agree with any of the proofs. Or they don't understand the proofs well enough to be able to use them effectively. So this is the current status. I had hoped to get 5 out of 5, but we haven't achieved that. And it seems to me, having not been able to achieve consensus, to bring what we agree on and what we disagree on into the public arena now. So these conversations had nothing to do with July, November, or January. They were not to prove those dates. That's a lot harder to do than just to agree that it's the 2024 election cycle. And we haven't been able to achieve that. So, from my perspective, and I can only give you my perspective, as one of their peers, so I don't have any superiority over them. The reason why there's a disagreement is because of people's different understanding of the rules of prophetic interpretation. To put it simply, there's a disagreement on methodology. And if you disagree on the rules or the methods, you can't come to an agreement because you'll see things differently. And if you're not careful, you'll end up using a crutch, what people use when they limp. And we all know what those crutches will be. You'll borrow information from an angel or the media to prove your point. That's my take on it, my understanding. You need to go to bed early and wake up early, and don't sleep during the studies. This is your opportunity to try to understand why people are teaching different things. And you need to be sure that they are teaching different things. The first thing you need to find out, besides July, November, and January, is why we can't agree on how to define the Sunday law as the 2024 US election cycle. And that's what most of this camp is going to be dealing with. To give you the opportunity to enter into the minds of these speakers and they're going to try to explain how they understand things in a very constrained way, not the way they want to do it. And you and me will be watching them. And if they try to sneak in an angel or two, we'll be here to help them to stop doing that. I know it sounds funny, but it's serious. They're going to do a little bit more than just discuss the proofs. As best as they understand it, they're going to try to explain the underlying methodology that they're using. That supports that truth. Sorry, that proof. And that's where you need to be on guard. As they tell you how they're using rules of prophetic interpretation, you need to make sure that you understand what they're doing and what they're doing is correct. A reminder, we've begun to do this at camps. When a study finishes and people come to the front and swamp the speaker, I'm asking both yourselves and the speaker to wait until people who are around the table get into their language groups and there's a translator available. We're now getting more serious about not making those gatherings an English affair. And we ask everybody to respect that. That even off camera, in those settings, that information needs to be translated. That means if you're a translator and you see a gap, please jump in and help. It's not official. Okay. So there's these proofs that you need to consider. And then there's methodology. And when we speak about methodology, I've asked the speakers to constrain themselves and to distill their explanation into simple packet sizes of information so you don't get confused. So as you listen to them, they should be putting this into two boxes. One of the boxes will be called symbology, and the other one will be called structure. They may use different terms. You may understand these terms differently, but they're the two boxes essentially in simple terms. So that will be discussed and woven through these proofs. Some of these proofs are more extensive than others. Some people's explanations are better than others. You need to listen to all the presentations, bring them together so you have a unified, a uniform picture of what's going on. So all of this should answer questions 1 and 2. Why an election? Why this one? That's about all we're going to get through this week. We may discuss further issues or further problems at the weekend. So, by way of a hook, to connect these studies with future ones, they're also going to give you their definition, which hopefully should be a common definition, even though they're using their own words, of 3 symbols taken from Revelation 17. The woman, the beast, and the heads. They're going to attempt to define what they believe those 3 things mean. They are going to attempt to define them in a way that was done in Slovakia. Which means you won't see the word papacy anywhere. You won't see USA anywhere. Or France. These will be symbolic definitions which should fit into every dispensation of Revelation 17. The reason why this is important, can't prove it yet, but I suspect it's their differing understanding of these three symbols and yours that has led to these different dates for the Sunday law. So that you're all aware, these three speakers all who all agree on those 5 proofs, they believe in the July date for the Sunday law. November and January. Put 25 because it's the following year, not the same. No secrets, no surprises. This is Elder Terry, Curtis, and Aaron, and Eleanor. We don't have that many presentations this week. The 7th present, I guess it's the 8th one, which is on Friday, has been slotted in for me to speak. So depending on how the week goes, that study will be used as a summary of the week, or the study will be taken by one of the speakers. We'll see how the week goes and what seems best to either bring all of those thoughts together and summarize them, or to give at least one, if not two, of the speakers a little bit more time. Not sure yet. We have 3 Q&As, and those Q&As are going to be more confrontational, or more, I call it confrontational. So this is an opportunity for speakers to explain why they disagree with the others. And it's an opportunity for yourselves to ask specific questions. We only have 4 of the speakers here this week. Aaron wasn't able to join us, and he's not able to join us through the week either. So during the Q&As on Sabbath, he'll be given an opportunity to, I guess, do a short presentation And that time will be carved out of one of the Q&As because it's the only time that he's able to speak. So all of this is still in flux. That means it's subject to change. What won't change are the topics. What might change is the sequence of speakers and some details. So I want to apologize for the technical problems we had. My time is up now. But before we end, does anybody have any questions? And so these will really be logistical questions, not theological ones. If you're not sure about what the aim of the week is or what's happening, or why it's happening, if you put your hand up, someone will get a mic to you, I guess.
It's not really a logistic question,
It's not really a logistic question.
but it's just regarding of
Do
the
English and
rule.
English?
No,
Attends. Répète,
We'll
reformule.
start again.
sorry about that. En anglais ou en français?
Non, English.
Okay, so it's not really a logistic question,
Alors, ce n'est pas vraiment une question logistique,
just regarding one of the rules,
juste en concernant une des règles.
because you mentioned that they are not allowed to refer to any angels.
Tu as dit qu'ils ne sont pas en mesure de, ils ne sont pas autorisés à faire référence à aucun des anges.
And you mentioned Jeff and Tess.
Et tu as mentionné Jeff et Tess.
What about you?
Et qu'en est-il de toi?
It's pointless quoting me.
Tu n'as point d'intérêt de me citer.
So I don't even have a position.
Donc, j'ai pas de position. Okay.
Well, they mentioned.
I can't hear you. You have to.
No, I'm saying that because often they mention you as well in their studies.
I can't.
I'm saying that because sometimes they can refer or they mention you in their studies. That's why.
Je le dis aussi parce que parfois on fait référence à toi dans, ils font référence à toi dans leur étude.
If they teach that in 2014 I said something,
S'ils disent qu'en 2014 j'ai dit quelque chose,
you have to be really wary about what they're doing.
alors tu devrais être inquiète sur ce qu'ils sont en train de
So
faire.
I'm not suggesting that we can't say
Je ne suggère pas qu'on ne peut pas dire
in 1989 Elder Jeff raised up this movement out of nothing. And hammered out a methodology that was usable for us. It's not that. People are free to do that. But what we can't say, and it's mostly going to be Elder Tess's material, because Elder Jeff left 6 years ago, that when people start quoting Elder Tess and her understanding of Acts 27, or when the Sunday law is, that's where people will fall foul. They'll get wrong. And I've not mentioned anything about any position that I would have about defining the Sunday law. Any concerns in real time, put your hands up and stop them. If they mention my name, along with the others. And if they explain it reasonably, then it's all good. Does that help? Okay. Put your hands up high if you're going to say something. Okay, we'll just take these two questions and then we'll close. We'll go to Charity and then Andreas.
Okay, I just want you to clarify something.
J'aimerais que tu clarifies un point.
You mentioned
Put the mic closer, I can't hear you.
you mentioned something to do with private discussions.
Tu as mentionné quelque chose concernant les discussions privées.
I want clarity on what you mean. Like, is there room for people to just have discussions on subjects that have been presented?
Les personnes qui discutent des sujets qui ont été présentés.
Or it just has to be done in an orderly fashion here in
Ça doit être fait d'une façon ordonnée ici,
the meetings?
dans les meetings.
Because maybe some of the speakers might be part of just people discussing as well.
Parce que peut-être que les orateurs seront parmi les discussions.
It's hard to answer your question,
Et
but what we don't want are people having organized studies in their homes. If you think you have a message to share with us, don't. Just keep it as simple as that. If you've got questions, constrain them to the subject at hand and ask the speakers. And I think they're trustworthy enough not to do anything naughty. They're trustworthy enough not to do anything wrong. Is that reasonable?
So are you saying people can discuss as long as it's not studies?
donc, les personnes peuvent discuter tant que ce n'est pas des études.
Of course, people can discuss, but don't have private group meetings in your homes.
Privé, des études privées dans votre maison.
That you're invited to in some shape or form, except if it's a slapping game. Okay. Because that takes a lot of studying, that does.
Okay, thank you.
Andres? Same question. Have I answered it? Okay. We're not trying to stop people talking. We want people to talk about the subject matter of this camp. And when you're at home with friends and family, of course you should be talking about what we're studying. What I don't want to happen is someone invites you to a meeting and they want to give their interpretation or their explanation of this or some other subject. Wasn't it enough, Andres?
Do you mean during the ICM or in general?
Parle de
For everyone else except you, at ICM, and for you in general.
Okay. Good.
Only while we're here. When you go home, do what you want. Let's close with prayer. Holy God, we thank you. Each of us came with bated breath, anticipating a great work would be done here. Help us to realize and experience that the great work can only be done with our cooperation. We know that we need you to be with the organizers, with the kitchen staff, but we want to send up a special prayer today for those who are being called to speak this week. Be with your agents. Help them to find the words that you need us to hear, so they can explain these complicated concepts and ideas in a way that makes sense to us. May each of us through the week hold these speakers in prayer. Hold them up to you. Hold them up to you so that they may be protected both in health and also in their physical strength. Be with each of us. We're here to enjoy ourselves, but we are living in perilous times. We know that you realize this. Please bring that realization to rest upon us individually. So we may truly understand the solemnity of the times in which we live. In Jesus' name, amen.